Thank you all for joining us today from clearly all over the world. We are so thrilled to have you in our homes today. My name is Mary Van Aken, and I'm the Director of Publicity at Macmillan Children's Publishing Group.
My name is Kristen Luby. I'm Marketing Manager for School and Library at Macmillan Children's Publishing Group.
I'm Molly Ellis, Vice President and Executive Director of Publicity at Macmillan Children's Publishing Group.
And I'm Elise Villalobos. I am the new marketing coordinator, and I will be the editor for the MacKids School and Library newsletter. I used to be a high school English teacher, and I'm excited to be here with y'all.
And we're excited to give you an overview of our Winter 2021 list of titles, including picture books, chapter books, middle grade, and young adult titles from all of our imprints at MacKids. Our imprints include Fievel and Friends, Farrar Straus Giroux books for young readers, Henry Holt books for young readers, First Second, Roaring Brook Press, and Odd Dot.
As you may have heard, we are also very excited to have a special guest with us later in the event. #1 New York Times bestselling author Katherine Applegate will be here to exclusively reveal the cover of her next standalone middle grade novel, Willodeen, coming to bookshelves everywhere next fall. A few housekeeping notes before we begin. In the chat, you'll see a link for a full list of titles we're discussing today. In the digital review copy column for picture books and graphic novels, you can click through to read a digital review copy on issue. Please do not share these links with anyone, as they are to be used for review purposes only. In the digital review copy column for middle grade and young adult titles, you'll find a link to request the book on NetGalley. As we only have 1 hour to present, please note that this is not our full list of titles. Please subscribe to our MacKids School and Library e-newsletter to keep up to speed with all of our new and upcoming releases. If you are live tweeting today, please use #MacKidsPreview. Finally, we expect all participants to maintain an atmosphere of respect and fairness. Anyone who violates the standard of behavior, including engaging in any form of harassment, may, at the discretion of the organizers, be immediately removed. So with that, I'm going to hand the mic back over to Kristen to kick things into gear with our picture book presentation. Take it away, Kristen. I'll share my screen now.
Great, thanks, Mary. I'm excited to talk to you a little bit about our picture book list today. As Mary said, this isn't our entire picture book list, but this is the best of the best books we want you to know about in winter 2021. The first book I'm going to be talking about is Outside Inside. One thing we know teachers, librarians, and parents have been grappling with in the past year is how to talk to children about COVID-19 and its effect on the world. When quarantine lockdowns first began, Caldecott honoree Lillian Pham began sketching scenes from her daily life as a way to process and cope with the events taking place. Wynne turned those sketches into Outside Inside, a beautiful new picture book that so poignantly captures this moment in history. This is a gentle story that never directly references the virus by name, but is filled with scenes that will be all too familiar to readers today. Scenes of life indoors, spending time with family, watching too much TV, and doing schoolwork, as well as more emotional scenes of our essential workers inside of hospitals, inspired by real news stories. This book is a celebration of our essential workers and of communities around the world coming together to face COVID-19. As Wynne reminds us, outside we may be different, but inside we are all the same. We hope this moving picture book will be a resource to you as you help young readers to process these current events. It ultimately ends with a hopeful message that we all need to hear. Spring will come, both inside and outside. I Dream of Popo is another extremely timely story. When a young girl and her family emigrate from Taiwan to America, she leaves behind her beloved Popo, her grandmother. They keep in touch through video calls, and every day the young girl thinks about Popo as she makes new friends, learns a new language, and adjusts to her new home. This sweet picture book accurately captures the challenges of the immigrant experience and navigating between two worlds. When she returns to Taiwan to visit, the girl finds that Popo's house looks different than she remembered, and she can't seem to find the words to speak as easily as she did before, but she can hug her Popo just the same way. This Own Voices picture book, created by Taiwanese American author, illustrator, and editor, will resonate with readers across the world. In a time when so many of us can't see our loved ones in person, this is a book that celebrates the strength of our emotional bonds, even when we're separated across oceans and time zones. In a year where we are also reckoning with America's history of racism, we hope you will share Runaway, the daring escape of Ona Judge, with your young readers. The book begins with a rhetorical question that echoes throughout the story. Why you run, Ona Judge? Inviting meaningful and necessary conversation. This picture book biography follows Ona's childhood and adolescence. Ona was enslaved by the Washingtons. She was raised alongside President George Washington's grandchildren and lived in their household. She served as a seamstress and personal servant to Martha Washington. When Ona was told that she would be a wedding gift to Martha's granddaughter, she decided to run away and emancipate herself at the age of 23 with the help of abolitionists. This powerful picture book doesn't shy away from the horrors of slavery or Ona's perilous journey to freedom. Author Ray Anthony Shepard is a former teacher. His author's note includes more information about the life of Ona Judge, and back matter includes a timeline of events as well. You may recognize Yesenia Moises as the illustrator of the beautiful picture book Honey Smoke by Monique Fields. In her first solo project, Yesenia introduces readers to Stella and her stellar hair. It's the day of the Big Star Little Gala, and Stella's hair is just not acting right. So she hops on her hoverboard and visits her fabulous aunties who live on every planet in our solar system to ask for help. They each try out their own unique hairstyles on Stella, and while they are all beautiful, none of them feels quite like Stella. But by the end of the story, Stella learns to create a style all her own. This cosmic adventure is a celebration of self-love and self-empowerment that beautifully illustrates a variety of hairstyles from African and Latin diasporas. Back matter includes some notes on our planet's solar system. Beloved author and illustrator of the Stella Diaz chapter books, some of my personal favorites, and Pura Belpré honoree, Angela Dominguez, is back with a new bilingual picture book, I Love You, Baby Burrito. Like her previous picture books, including How Are You, Como Estás, the text includes both English and Spanish, as well as a simple glossary of Spanish vocabulary. This is an adorable story celebrating the act of swaddling a newborn baby like a burrito, a perfect, gentle read aloud before an afternoon siesta. In the powerful and deeply personal picture book, Watch Me, readers meet Joe, who was born in Sierra Leone and had a dream of coming to America. His friends and family told him that Americans would laugh at his accent and fear his dark skin. They told him that he'd never fit in. He simply smiled and said, "Watch me." His friends and family were right. America was new and strange. He was told to go back to Africa, but Joe studied hard, and when his teachers didn't believe in him, he just said, "Watch me." And by the end of his school years, he was Dr. Joe. And how do we know Joe's story? He is author Doyen Richards' father. And in telling the story of how his father came to America, Doyen tells the story of many immigrants and opens the experience up to readers of all ages and all backgrounds. This is a moving and empowering story of how many different people from different places make us great. Acclaimed artist Joe Cepeda brings the story to life with beautiful paintings full of heart. Caldecott Medal winner Matthew Cordell's newest picture book, Bear Island, begins with the loss of a beloved family dog, Charlie. Louise knows that life without Charlie will never be the same. Still grieving, she rows a boat to an island in the middle of the lake that Charlie loved. And while exploring, she encounters a bear. And the bear is angry, but Louise is angry too, angry about Charlie. She recognizes a sadness in the bear, and she feels it too. So every day, Louise returns to the island to have an adventure with the bear. Some days are better than others. Some days the bear is sad, and some days Louise is sad, but every day they become better together. Until one day, the bear must return to his den to hibernate. It's not fair when the things we love must end, says Louise. Once again, she believes that life will never be the same. But sometimes an ending is the beginning of something new. And on the first day of spring, her family welcomes a new puppy. Returning to the island, Louise searches for the bear but never finds him. Was any of it real? Bear Island is a moving, poignant story about loss and healing that will bring comfort to even the youngest readers, illustrating the grief process in an accessible way. What's the Matter, Marlowe is the perfect book for your social emotional learning units, exploring big emotions like anger, sadness, and empathy. Coco and Marlowe are best friends. They do everything together. But one day something is wrong with Marlowe. He doesn't want to play. He tells Coco to go away. Coco tries to make a joke, but that only makes Marlowe more angry, and he turns away from Coco. Coco isn't sure what to do until she remembers that as his best friend, she can always find Marlowe. She realizes that Marlowe isn't just angry, he's sad too. She apologizes and they cry together. This sweet story illustrates that sometimes being a good friend just means being there during the hard moments, and that friends can help each other to navigate big emotions. In December 2020, we published Mighty Justice, a young reader's adaptation of Debbie Johnson Roundtree's adult memoir. Debbie was a remarkable civil rights activist and a successful attorney who won a landmark bus desegregation case that helped dismantle Jim Crow laws. This new picture book, We Wait for the Sun, depicts one of Debbie's favorite childhood memories, harvesting blackberries before dawn with her beloved grandmother. It may seem like an insignificant memory in a life as storied as Debbie's, but as co-author Katie McCabe describes in her powerful author's note, Debbie's relationship with her grandmother goes to the very heart of who she was as a person. During a time when the KKK was terrorizing Black communities and Jim Crow laws were telling Black children that they were inferior, Debbie's grandmother gave her a sense of security and a feeling of self-worth, which shaped the woman she would someday become. And in a time filled with darkness, Grandma Rachel believed in the dawn. Stunningly illustrated by Rasa Figura, this picture book includes extensive back matter on the lives of Debbie and her grandmother, and together with Mighty Justice, creates a powerful portrait of a civil rights hero. Home is in Between is a deeply personal story for acclaimed author Matali Perkins, who emigrated to the United States from the villages of Bengal with her family when she was 7. As told through a fictional character, Shanti, Matali had to work hard to understand the code at school, including American culture, manners, trends, slang, and rituals. Meanwhile, at home, she was trying to stay fluent in Bengali culture and language. Going back and forth, she often felt that she didn't belong in either world, but now she sees her code switching as a strength, and she hopes that her new picture book can show young readers that the spaces between cultural identities doesn't have to be a barrier. It can be a threshold of gratitude that allows you to celebrate the best of many worlds and to find their home in that in-between. From the author and illustrator team behind the acclaimed picture book, Counting on Katherine, How Katherine Johnson Saved Apollo 13, comes a new nonfiction picture book about Title IX, the federal civil rights law that protects the equal rights of students, athletes, and professionals in America, regardless of their gender. Before Title IX was passed, women could be fired when they got pregnant, they could be denied the chance to play sports, and they could be prevented from pursuing careers like law, medicine, and science. But Title IX changed all of that. This fascinating account introduces young readers to the brave politicians who took risks to secure women's dreams and their futures under the Constitution. This is also a great primer to start discussions on how laws can shape our lives and how they can be used to create justice and equality. Have you ever had the feeling that you forgot to do something important, but you just couldn't remember what? Or how about the feeling that everyone is giving you funny looks, but you don't know why? Well, one day Jeff the Bear is experiencing just that. Something's definitely wrong, but he decides to just play it cool and make casual conversation with every animal he runs into, but he can't shake the feeling that something is wrong. And so he asks his friend, Anders the hare, who breaks it to him gently, "Dude, you're wearing underwear." And when Jeff and Anders run into a gaggle of forest creatures, Anders backs him up by putting on his own pair and insisting underwear is all the rage. And actually, they're weird for not wearing them, to be honest. And soon every animal is putting on underpants. With the same side-splitting humor he brought to his New York Times bestsellers, The Good Egg and The Bad Seed, Jory John delivers a hilarious read aloud that is sure to have kids giggling and demanding repeated readings. And in between giggles, they'll learn a valuable lesson about being there for your friends, even at their most embarrassing moments. Because good friends are like underwear. They're reliable and supportive. From Caldecott Honor winner Elisha Cooper comes a new picture book that humorously illustrates the concepts of opposites through a day in the life of a cat and a puppy. Cat and puppy couldn't be more different. When you ask puppy if he wants to go outside, the answer is yes, 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 oh please yes. And cat? Well, if I must. Puppy is excited about everything, whereas the cat just deigns to be there. But by the end of the day, readers will realize that cat and puppy are more similar than they appear. And sometimes the best days are simply the ones we spend together. This adorable picture book is a timeless tale of friendship that cat and dog lovers alike will love. You may already be familiar with Lydia Sigworth's story if you listen to NPR's This American Life. On their episode, The Room of Requirement, Lydia told a story about the library in Wisconsin where her family spent every day for 6 months. For Lydia, this was a magical time, especially because of a very special librarian named Mrs. S, who always knew just the right books to share, who looked Lydia in the eyes and treated her like a grown-up. Years later, Lydia realized that the reason she and her family spent so much time in the library was because they were homeless. But Lydia never remembered that time as traumatic. She remembered it fondly, mostly because of Mrs. S. And as an adult, she tracked down Mrs. S to thank her for her kindness and to tell her about the impact she had on Lydia's life. So impactful that Lydia grew up to become a librarian. This picture book is a love letter to libraries and a thank you letter to librarians, a story about the safe space that a library can be for a young person in need, and the feeling of being seen by a librarian who knows exactly the right book for you and believes you are a special person. I've cried every time I read this picture book. I'm almost crying now, so I would recommend having a box of tissues on hand for this one. And finally, very quickly, I just want to note that we have new books coming in some of our most popular series. Mars is the newest book in Stacey McAnulty's classroom favorite Our Universe series, following Earth, Sun, Moon, and most recently, I Am Ocean. Lily Williams is back with a new environmental picture book about what would happen if bees disappeared. This is perfect for STEM lessons on climate change and the delicate balance of ecosystems. And finally, we have a follow-up to Be Kind, Pat Zietlow-Miller's New York Times bestseller. Be Strong, a new story about finding strength in the most unlikely places, will be available in August. And that's all the time we have for our picture book list. I'm going to pass the mic back over to Mary to introduce our chapter books and middle grade titles.
Hello again. So moving right along to chapter books and middle grade. And then following this presentation, before we head into YA, we will have our special guest. So starting in middle grade, we're going to start with nonfiction. Okay, give me one moment. Just pulling up my script. Okay. In February 2020, I went to Antarctica for my honeymoon, and it was an experience of a lifetime. Anyone who travels to Antarctica knows that this trip is only possible thanks to the fearless, intrepid explorers who led the exploration of this most remote part of the planet. Imagine my delight that one of our most starred-reviewed books thus far in 2021 is Race to the Bottom of the Earth, Surviving Antarctica by Rebecca Barone, a thrilling nonfiction book for young readers chronicling two treacherous, groundbreaking expeditions to the South Pole, one in 1910, the first journey to the South Pole, and one in 2018, the first unaided, unsupported solo crossing of Antarctica attempted by not one, but two brave souls, Captain Lewis Rudd and Colin O'Brady. Speaking of survival stories, I'm thrilled to introduce a memoir by a man whose name is synonymous with survival stories, Gary Paulson. Gary chronicles his childhood in Gone to the Woods, his must-read memoir on sale now. Gary had a childhood that kids living in quarantine today can only dream of. Run-ins with bears, moose, geese, and sharks. Yes, sharks, all add up to a picture of a man who went on to write one of the most famed survival stories of all time. There are over 35 million copies of Gary's books in print, and readers all over the world are introduced to his work every year in schools and in colleges. Hatchet and Dog Song are undoubtedly his most popular books, but what readers don't know is how many stories from those books are pulled directly from his life growing up in a broken, neglectful home in Chicago, or his preteen and teen years spent turning to the woods for escape and solace. Whether you're already a Gary Paulson fan or someone who has not yet come to his books, I don't think there's many of those in this room, his memoir is one to add to your shelf. Next up, we have Barbara O'Connor. You probably know her from her perennial New York Times bestseller, Wish, and her other delightful middle grade books. I'm so excited to have a new one to talk to you about today, Halfway to Harmony. This book has so many elements of a middle grade classic, a summer of self-discovery, overcoming a terrible loss, and unlikely friendships that change your world. Walter Tipple's world is upturned when his big brother does not return from the army. There are so many of us that know what it is to want to grow up to be just like your older sibling. So this book asks, what happens when that role model is suddenly and traumatically taken away? With the help of Posey, the new girl from next door, Posey's very, very sweet three-legged dog sidekick Pork Chop, and an eccentric man named Banjo, Walter starts to make his own way to figure out who he is without his brother. This is sure to be a classic coming-of-age tale. For years, students have asked Kimberly Willis Holt if she would write a sequel to her National Book Award winner When Zachary Beaver Came to Town. And at last, her fans, young and older, can delight in the knowledge that the story will continue in The Ambassador of Nowhere, Texas, a post-9/11 companion that centers Toby's daughter, Riley. Riley is at a crossroads. Her best friend, Twig, has started pushing her away, just as Joe, a new kid from New York, settles into their small town of Antler. Riley befriends Joe and learns that Joe's father was a first responder at 9/11. The two unlikely friends soon embark on a project to find Zachary Beaver and hopefully reconnect him with Riley's father almost 30 years later. With the 20th anniversary of 9/11 coming this fall, this is sure to be a good conversation starter in classrooms and libraries. Booklist in a starred review says it best with, "It's obvious that Kimberly Willis Holt loves her fully realized characters and their small town setting, and readers can't help but feel the same." Alana K. Arnold has just a few awards to her name. A Prince Honor? Check. National Book Award finalist? Check. Junior Library Guild? Check, 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 check. And we are honored to publish just a critically acclaimed author's first foray into chapter books with Starla Jean, the first in a series about Starla. This first book asks the age-old question, which came first, the chicken or the friendship? While you might think the answer is obviously the chicken, I'd argue it's the friendship, because as soon as Starla sees this chicken during a visit to the park with her dad, they are destined to be friends. Starla's father makes the mistake of saying to her that if she can catch the chicken, she can keep it. And well, you better believe that that's exactly what Starla does. Perfect for fans of Mercy Watson, new readers will appreciate the short chapters and limited amount of text per page and the whimsical art by A.N. King that brings these delightful characters to life. Taking a sharp left and decidedly less whimsical turn, we head for a moment into middle grade nonfiction again with 7 Voyages, How China's Treasure Fleet Conquered the Sea by New York Times bestselling author Lawrence Bergreen and author Sarah Frey. This is an immaculately researched history for young readers detailing the life of Zhang He, his complex and enduring friendship with his emperor, and the epic 7 voyages he led that would establish China as a global power. I need to quote the starred review from Booklist here, which says, "The research for this book must have been formidable as the voyages, with the authors covering everything from Chinese daily life in the 1400s to shipbuilding and regional politics. It's never overwhelming though, since as well as being fascinating on their own, these facts contextualize the swashbuckling drama. This fast-paced and illustrated take on this extraordinary and little-known history lends itself perfectly to the classroom." The next book is every bit as special as its gorgeous cover. Debut author E.L. Shen is a writer, editor, and former figure skater who channeled her childhood skating career into the stirring and compulsively readable middle grade novel about Maxine, a 12-year-old girl who is trying to nail that perfect landing on the ice, at home, and in middle school. I know no one in this room will underestimate the pressures on middle schoolers to both define and distinguish themselves while also avoiding the attention of bullies that seize on just those differences to diminish your spirit. At the same time that Maxine is working tirelessly to excel on the ice, her experience as the only Asian American girl in her school is wrenchingly real in its emotions, microaggressions, and social complications. E.L. Shen's debut artfully examines racism, female rivalry, and friendship, and the enduring necessity of love and support. Kirk has called it a winner in a star review, and I couldn't agree more. Moving back into nonfiction, I'm pleased to introduce Meltdown, Earthquake, Tsunami, and Nuclear Disaster in Fukushima. Deirdre Langland explores for middle grade readers the harrowing story of the deadly earthquake, tsunami, and nuclear meltdown that caused the 2011 Fukushima power plant disaster. Just 10 years in the past, the largest earthquake ever measured in Japan occurred off the northeast coast and triggered a tsunami with a wall of water 128 feet high. The tsunami damaged the nuclear power plant in Fukushima, triggering a nightmare scenario a nuclear meltdown. For 6 days, employees at the plant worked to contain the meltdown, and disaster workers scoured the surrounding flooded area for survivors. This book examines the science behind this massive disaster and looks back at the people who experienced an unprecedented trifecta of destruction. Jen Petra-Roy has distinguished herself as an author unafraid to tackle difficult issues with exceptional nuance. She's a teen librarian, and in every book, it's clear how well she knows her audience. Life in the Balance is no exception. Like Maxine in The Comeback, the protagonist of Life in the Balance is struggling to balance a lot. Veronica started playing softball when she was practically in diapers and has been working towards trying out for the all-star softball team for years. On the eve of the tryouts, Veronica's mom announces she's going into rehab for alcoholism, and her dad tells Veronica they may not be able to afford the fees to be on the team. Veronica sets off to raise those funds herself by entering a talent show and discovers so much about herself along the way. Reading this book made me recall a conversation I had with a few teachers at NCTE about how crucial it is not to shy away from topics we sometimes call difficult. Young readers are dealing with difficult issues and need to see these experiences reflected back to them in a sensitive, thoughtful way. They are in such good hands with Jen, and I can't recommend this read enough. A collection of short biographies from all over Latin America and across the United States, from Supreme Court Justice Sotomayor to my personal favorite Selena, to NASA's first virtual reality engineer, Evelyn Morales. This is a book for aspiring artists, scientists, activists, and accompanying portraits of them. It is accompanied by portraits of them imagined as children. Latinitas is a personal favorite on this list for me, and I implore all of you to go and check out the digital review copy. The genesis for this book started when Juliet was working as an art teacher at a New York City public school that enrolled many Dominican, Puerto Rican, and Mexican students, yet all the posters adorning the walls featured historical figures like Albert Einstein and Benjamin Franklin, but no one that looked like her students. She decided to create a series of posters featuring historic Latinx figures, and while researching, noticed that she could find information about Latinx men with ease, but Latinas were too often relegated to the sidelines as historical footnotes. Her agent saw these posters and approached her with this idea, and the book was born, that they could pair these illustrations with these profiles. The illustrations are gorgeous and hand-painted, spotlighting the first small steps these women took on the road to becoming icons, with an emphasis on the power of childhood dreams. Do you love graphic novels? Do you love graphic novels with strong girl protagonists? Do you love graphic novels with strong girl protagonists on a social justice mission? Of course you do. Look no further than The Leak by Kate Reed Petty and Andrea Bell. I know you will be drawn immediately to Ruth, as I was, a budding journalist determined to uncover a secret that threatens her town. When she discovers a strange black slime in the man-made lake of her suburban neighborhood, she decides to investigate. She seeks the truth at all costs, even if it means taking on the rich local country club owner who she believes is responsible for the pollution. Deftly exploring issues of journalistic integrity and climate activism, this is the perfect recommendation for young readers who know they have the power to make change. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce you all to a new chapter book series by today's special author guest, Katherine Applegate. The first in a new series, the first book introduces Doggo, a, let's say, mature dog that is used to things a certain way in his family. He likes routine, so much so that the cat thinks he's boring. We're also introduced to Pupper. Pupper is playful and messy and turns the house and Doggo's routines upside down. You can guess what happens next, right? What follows is a classic opposites attract tale. Kids will see themselves in both characters as they watch Doggo and Pupper navigate their differences to a place of understanding and mutual appreciation and affection. With 6 stories featuring delightful illustrations by Charlie Adler, this will be a great for both read-alouds and read-along. For the record, I'm more of a Doggo than a Pupper. Tanya Guerrero's All You Need Is Love is a contemporary middle grade coming of age about a 12-year-old half Filipino, half Spanish girl who goes to live with her grandmother for the summer, gaining confidence through a newly discovered passion for baking. This is perfect for fans of Hello Universe, and Mercy Suarez changes gears. Filipino and Spanish by birth, Tanya was inspired by the time she spent living in Spain after her parents' separation. Although it touches on domestic violence and, again, there's that word, difficult family dynamics, the story's beats never get too heavy, and it is ultimately an empowering and joyful book about making yourself and your family whole again. When the editor of The Gilded Girl described this book as the American Girl series with magic, suffice it to say, my interest was piqued. Once I dipped in and found myself at Miss Posterity's Academy for Practical Magic in New York City, I was hooked. This heartfelt and utterly absorbing middle grade novel follows 12-year-old Emma. Emma is accustomed to the best, but when her father dies and leaves her penniless, she is reduced to working off her debts in Miss Posterity alongside Izzy, a daring servant who refuses to let her magic be snuffed out. Author Alyssa Coleman intentionally explores the tenuous relationship between education and class, tackling the gaps in access that money creates for kids, all of which resonates with so many conversations we're having today. Anne Ursu calls it a timely, engrossing, and delightful book, and we couldn't agree more. This middle grade novel touches upon timely subject topics like anxiety, OCD, self-deprecation, which a lot of tweens quietly struggle with. Cora is constantly counting the minutes. It's the only thing that stops her brain from rattling with worry, from convincing her that danger is up ahead. As if delivering on her worst fears, danger literally does show up on Cora's doorstep. Her absentee uncle, whose sudden presence in the middle of the night makes her parents nervous and secretive, threatens to upend her carefully curated security. As someone who was diagnosed with OCD when I was Cora's age, I know so intimately the internal high stakes that OCD introduces, especially at an age where keeping anything in perspective is so challenging. Jennifer really nails the voice here, and while it's hard at times to watch Cora work through all that turmoil, it makes the ending so much more satisfying. Finally, this is the last middle grade title presentation. We're launching this April Outdoor Schools, an immersive 8-title series from some of the most recognized names in the outdoor community, encouraging kids to put away the screens and head outside. The series was created in response to an urgent need that families were experiencing daily to create more opportunities for learning outdoors. This has only become more timely during the global pandemic. Americans are caught up in one of the largest migrations in recent history, the movement indoors and online, causing a surge in mental and physical health problems. What makes this series truly exceptional is how accessible it is for children in all environments and at every level of comfort with nature. From rural to urban communities and from outdoor enthusiasts to cautious new adventurers like me, there is something for everyone. The format is also noteworthy. The books are designed to be interactive with pages of activities, journal prompts, and checklists for young explorers. I'm also confident they are the most sturdy books we have ever published. They will weather any adventure. On this next slide, you'll find a list of popular and best-selling series we have continuing. All of these titles are listed on the tip sheet we have linked in the chat. And then finally, we have even more books, middle grade books, available on NetGalley. So please take time to peruse that list of titles. And now I have the true pleasure of inviting our special guest, Katherine Applegate, to the stage. Katherine, will you please join us and say hello to everyone?
Hi, Mary. How are you? I'm so excited to be here.
Oh, it's so exciting to see you, Katherine. It's been way too long.
I know. It's go ahead.
No, you go. Go ahead.
I was just going to say it's funny. I love doing Zooms and it's such a great way to connect. But I found myself this morning longing for the days when we used to just, mush into a conference room and breathe all over each other and eat stale donuts. And I really hope we can get back to that eventually. So knock on wood, we're getting there. But.
Yes, I love your line about, I can't wait till we can breathe all over each other. I haven't breathed on anyone in ages, Katherine.
I know.
Well,
I know.
You're here today to help us unveil the cover of Willodeen, your next standalone middle grade novel, coming to bookshelves September 7th, 2021. Wow. I just went back 20 years. I think we're all ready to go back a bit. I have some questions for once we reveal the cover, but before we do so, do you have anything you want to say before I unveil?
Oh, I'm so excited about this cover. It's honestly, I think it's one of my favorite of all time. One thing I did want, before I forget, I wanted to say to all the teachers and librarians and booksellers out there, thank you, thank you, thank you. I know this has been a horrifically difficult year. Every time I do a Zoom with a class, I'm just marvel at the teacher's ability to get the kids connecting, and it's I can't even imagine how difficult it's been. So thank you. Fortunately, my kids are now in their 20s, but I can't imagine how difficult it has been for you guys. So thank you. Willodeen is really near and dear to my heart. I'm so excited about it. I think you can sum it up pretty well with the epigraph I chose, which is a very brief, elegant statement from Greta Thunberg, or as I have discovered, it's Greta Thunberg, but let's stick with the American version. And during a speech, she said, and I want to make sure I get it right, I've learned you are never too small to make a difference. I mean, it's such an important thing to be telling our kids right now, especially in the middle of all this chaos and crisis. And Willodeen is about climate activism in a fantasy sort of way. It deals with very real and relatable environmental questions, but in a way that I hope will be really appealing to younger readers. And it features a lot of STEM content, things like biodiversity and species interdependence, but fundamentally it's about love and courage and family and friends. And I think you need to show the cover because it's so cool.
I agree, Katherine. I am going to say before I reveal it that hold off for just 20 minutes from sharing this anywhere else but in this room. We're going to have a cover reveal at 4:30. So I think we'll probably just be wrapping up around then after our YA presentations, and I'll put the link in the chat. So this is for now, for your eyes only. So without further ado, and drum roll please, we have the cover, Willodeen.
Oh, I so love that.
I wish we could all gasp together and enjoy this beautiful cover illustrated by Charles Santoso, designed by Rich Dees, which they're also the team behind the Wish Tree cover, because it is really, it's exceptional, and it really captures I think the spirit of the book. I had a couple questions for you about the book that we've answered a couple of them, but I think two things I want to ask. One, can you describe what people see on the cover here? Who are these characters? And then I'll ask you my other question before I let you off the hook.
Both these guys are really vital to the story. And Charles did a bunch of different versions. And when we saw this one, I think we all went, oh, yes, because I think kids are going to look at it and just, instantly be drawn to these two species. As I mentioned, this is a fantasy, so I invented lots of species for the book. What you're looking at, the big purpley guy with the green and yellow eyes is called a screecher. Screechers are a nuisance species, a little like skunks, in that when they're scared, they give off a horrific odor. They're not exactly cute and cuddly. On the other hand, we have perched there on top a hummingbird, and hummingbirds look like little flying polar bears, and they migrate like monarchs. Every year they come back to Willodeen's village, where they nest in trees called blue willows, And the cool thing about them is they make their nests out of bubbles, very resilient, clear bubbles that absorb the sunlight during the day and then they glow at night. So they're, of course, adored. And one of the catalysts for writing about this was the fact that I moved recently to LA and we have quite a coyote population we've been dealing with. I think they're fascinating and fantastic, but they do make things a little complicated if you have small pets. So I was thinking a lot about this interaction between, you know, an urban environment and wildlife, something we see everywhere. And that's how the Screecher was born. And Willodeen is sort of an activist in all this, sort of a little bit Greta, a little bit Jane Goodall. And she is looking at the strange disappearance of the hummingbirds and trying to figure out why it's happening. So it's a little bit of an eco mystery, but I think it's very much more about the development of a friendship and a girl finding courage to really speak her mind.
Thank you so much for that description. I think a lot of people in the chat are both excited about the book and also very excited about the hummingbird. Sounds I feel like I know what kind of promo we need to make. So I want to end with one question before I hand it over to Molly to present our list of YA titles. You have a tendency to write books that show that even one person can make a difference, no matter how big the obstacle. What would you say to kids who want to make a difference when it comes to preserving our planet?
You know, I think eco angst is such a part of children's lives now that it's very good for us to talk about it very directly. I think you tell them a couple things. First of all, start small. It's overwhelming. I know we all feel that way. So pick a tiny little spot where you can make a difference. Against that, remember that there's strength in numbers. And when I talk to kids, when I do Zooms or when I visit schools and I hear how really engaged they are with this question and anxious to make changes and worried, I always come away feeling hopeful. And that's the most important thing to remember, stay hopeful.
Well, on that note, Katherine, thank you so much. We're so excited about this book. And for everyone, I see a lot of questions about, you know, keeping up with news about Willodeen. Can we read Willodeen? But keep subscribed to our newsletter. We'll keep you updated there with everything, you know, any new news we have. And you can also find Katherine online. I believe her, you know, her Twitter and Instagram handle are shared in the chat. Katherine, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Oh, thanks, Mary. And thanks, everybody.
Hi, Katherine. All right, Molly, I'm handing it over to you to introduce a selection of our Winter 2021 young adult titles. Take it away.
You know, when we made this plan, I didn't really think that hard about the fact that I was going to have to present right after the Katherine Applegate. And I'm completely rethinking all of my life choices, but I will try to do you justice as I walk you through some of these select YA titles from our list. It's a fantastic list. So here we go. Let's dive right in with The Awakening of Malcolm X. The Awakening of Malcolm X is an empowering fictionalized account of Malcolm X's adolescent years in jail, written by his daughter, Ilyasah Shabazz, along with 2019 Coretta Scott King John Steptoe Award winner, Tiffany D. Jackson. This pairing could only be called one thing, a critically acclaimed dream team. Ilyasah's most recent novel, Betty Before X, was an NYPL, Washington Post, and Kirkus Review's Best Book of 2018. As mentioned, Tiffany D. Jackson recently won the Coretta Scott King John C. Steptoe New Talent Award. She's also won the NAACP Image Award and has received numerous acclaim for her many books. And of course, Ilyasah is the third daughter of Malcolm X. Therefore, she is intimately connected to his story, and that connection is evident through every page of the read. And this book isn't just powerful, it's also timely. In an age of mass incarceration and police brutality, affirming and inspiring narratives, both contemporary and historical, are in great demand. There's also great potential here for curricular tie-in, as this book focuses not just on Malcolm X as a historical figure or the ways that his life touched current events, but it also touches on Jim Crow laws, Jackie Robinson, the civil rights movement, and activism. So next on our list, The Angel of Greenwood. So I am ashamed to admit that I was in my 30s before I learned about the Greenwood Massacre, also known as the Tulsa Massacre, a horrific moment in American history during which a thriving Black community known as the Black Wall Street was destroyed by white violence. It's a difficult event to speak about, but one that needs to be part of the public consciousness. And Angel of Greenwood by the much celebrated Randy Pink introduces the event to young readers via a gripping, visceral story about two teens caught in the midst of the maelstrom. As she's proven with books like Girls Like Us, Randy is a master of historical fiction, and I'm not the only one who thinks so. The Angel of Greenwood is a Junior Library Guild selection, a BuzzFeed historical fiction book that will start 2021 off right and has received 1-star review thus far. I think that one of the things it does so well is not just tell the story of this horrible moment, but it really paints a portrait of what the community was like before this happened. It gives you a real sense of what it must have like, which is in some ways hard to read because it just really drives home how much was lost, but also it offers a new perspective that hasn't been seen before. Next up, we have the mirror season. Oh, see, we're going to go to Playing with Fire. So New York Times best-selling author April Henry is a frequent State Award winner and Scholastic Book Club best-selling author who has built a terrific teen following with her 10 YA mysteries. In her latest ripped from the headlines thriller, Playing with Fire, a fire cuts off a popular trail in the Oregon forest, leaving a small group trapped by the flames. Their only options are to find another way out or to die. This story is loosely based on the Eagle Creek fire in Oregon in 2017. And in addition to being a great read, it engages readers in themes of climate change and survival in the wild. As she has done with all of her books, April has extensively researched this subject matter and has even taken a course in wilderness survival in the preparation for writing of this book. So, What Big Teeth? Deliciously gothic and wonderfully creepy. That's how the Bolton of the Center for Children's Books describe What Big Teeth in their starred review, and I have to agree. This delightfully sinister debut features a lush gothic setting, twisted family lore, and a sense of horror that both repulses and intrigues. It is perfect for fans of books like The Hazelwood and Wilder Girls. And I must say that it has one of the most striking covers of any book in recent memory. But perhaps what is most special about What Big Teeth is that on top of being a story about confronting monsters and dark secrets, this is also a classic teen story of struggling to find yourself and how to reconcile with who you are outside of your family while maintaining your place in it. Ultimately, this is a richly fantastical book that highlights truths about the human condition that are all too real. Mirror Season by Anna Marie McLemore. Now, to say Anna Marie McLemore is a critical darling would be an understatement. Their books have received a Stonewall Honor, a Prince nomination, a National Book Awards longlist, and more stars than the evening sky, many of which rave about Anna Marie's beautiful lyrical prose. In the Mirror Season, that prose is as present as ever, but this story about two teens who strike up a friendship after discovering they were both assaulted at the same party offers a more contemporary setting and hook than Anna Marie's previous books. As Kirk has said in their starred review, The Mirror Season is an aching, vivid narrative. The poetic and vulnerable prose illuminates the need for more open conversation about sexuality, consent, and abuse without the limits of the gender binary. Every book of Anna Marie's is poignant and magical, but we think this one has the potential to really break out in a big way in the commercial space. Fire's Keeper's Daughter. Please ignore the corgi in the background. This book is so many things. It is a dazzling own voices debut about a Native teen who must root out the corruption in her community for readers of Angie Thomas and Tommy Orange. It's also a propulsive mystery that seamlessly weaves together timely themes of injustice, a depth exploration of Native identity, and some steamy romance for a surefire hit. Inspired by the Native teens she's worked with every day and in her own Ojibwe community, Angeline Bully, former director of the Office of Indian Education at the U.S. Department of Education, has crafted a rich, dynamic portrait of the modern Native experience. We won Firekeeper's Daughter in a massive auction. I am talking a nail biter. Back when we were in the office, you could hear the roar go around the building when we found out that we had won this book. And the buzz has been hot ever since. As publication draws closer and our blockbuster campaign rolls out, we become more and more certain that this is going to be one of the biggest books of 2020. But don't just take it from me. I will leave it with one of our many blurbs from author Courtney Summers of Sadie, who said that Firekeeper's Daughter is a gripping and unforgettable story of family, community, and identity, told through the eyes of a protagonist so powerfully realized on the page, you'll swear you can hear her heartbeat. Dawn Fontaine is a force to be reckoned with, and so is Angeline Bully. This is one bold, uncompromising, and elegantly crafted debut. I could not agree more. Lost in the Neverwoods. So Aiden Thomas burst onto the YA scene this past fall with Cemetery Boys, a funny, heartfelt Latinx romance that made history by being the first own voices YA novel by a trans person to hit the New York Times bestseller list on the YA list. Aiden's star power remains evident in this eerie re-envisioning of Peter Pan, which takes the familiar elements of the classic story, puts a dark spin on it, and then asks, what's next? This plot is just as twisty as the dark forest paths that fill its pages, and the book's mysteries will keep readers turning pages well into the night. While there's a lot of intentional murkiness in the book, there's one thing that is evidently clear. Aiden is far from a one-hit wonder. Who's ready for Rule of Wolves? Leigh Bardugo's Grishaverse novels are more than just best-selling books. They're a worldwide phenomenon, and anyone who's had the pleasure of reading them will have no doubts as to why. Leigh is truly a master of her craft. Her world building is impeccable. To paraphrase one NPR review, you experience her settings with all 5 of your senses. Her characters are unforgettably real. I think of Nina every time I eat a waffle, and Kaz every time I deliver a truly savage burn. Her wit is unmatched, and I say without exaggeration that her storytelling is on par with those of the great classics. And with the series adaptation debuting on Netflix this April, awareness of these books is going to reach stratospheric heights. We didn't plan that timing, but it is incredibly fortuitous that we'll be releasing Rule of Wolves, the explosive finale of the Grishaverse novels, at least for now, in late March. I'm forbidden from revealing too much for fear of spoilers, but I can say that Rule of Wolves has everything that readers love about Leigh's books in droves. That's all I can say, except these 2 words, The Darkling. Taking a cue from Scream and other iconic urban legends, the Mary Shelley Club elevates the thriller genre with a clever dissection of teen slasher tropes and biting social commentary. Sharp, snappy, and surprisingly funny, the characters and nuanced coming-of-age themes balance out the horror elements and make this book feel accessible and authentically teen. Goldie Moljavsky is a New York Times bestselling author who we are thrilled to introduce to our list. Next up, The Forest of Stolen Girls by June Hirsch, who happens to be a librarian herself at the Toronto Public Library. June is a rising star. Her debut novel, The Silence of Bones, was an ABA Indies Introduced selection, and The Forest of Stolen Girls, her sophomore effort, has all the elegant, evocative prose of her debut, yet clearly shows signs of growth and maturity as a writer. Plus, it's great to see historical YA that isn't fantasy and that is set somewhere that's not the US or Europe, in this case, set in East Asia. This plot is sophisticated enough to draw in crossover readers, as well as teens who are hungry for well-crafted atmospheric mystery. What Beauty There Is a stunning novel about brutality and beauty and about broken people trying to survive. Perfect for fans of Patrick Ness, Laura Ruby, and Meg Rosoff. Corey Anderson's stark, suspenseful debut perfectly straddles the intersection of commercial and literary and announces the arrival of an important new voice in YA. Corey recently won the League of Utah Writers Young Adult Novel Award and grand prize in the Storymakers Conference First Chapter Contest. You can see why the judges loved her. This accomplished debut thriller pulls you in from the very start and doesn't let go, keeping readers on the edge of their seats. In her depiction of teens in a rural, impoverished area, Anderson highlights a segment of the population not often seen in YA and masterfully blends dual protagonist viewpoints with a bold feminist narrative and offers a keen perspective on courage, resilience, and what it means to love. We are so excited to add the massively talented Joan He to our list with the ones we've meant to find. Her debut fantasy, The Descendant of the Crane, won critical and commercial acclaim. And this book is even more cinematic than the first. With its masterful pacing, inventive world building, and relatable teen heroines, this book is perfect for fans of authors like Marie Lu and Rick Yancey. But it also feels wholly original, fun, and fresh. Full of twists and turns, this book is hard to encapsulate, but if I had to try, I'd described it as We Were Liars meets Lost. Ace of Spades, so Gossip Girl meets Get Out in this YA contemporary thriller by debut author Farida Abike-Iyemide about two students, Devin and Chiamaka, and their struggles against an anonymous bully. Devin and Chiamaka are two of the only Black students at the elite Niveus Academy. But it also officially puts them in the running for valedictorian. But shortly after this big announcement is made, though, someone who goes by Aces begins using anonymous text messages to reveal secrets about the two of them that turn their lives upside down and that threaten every aspect of their carefully planned futures. As Aces shows no sign of stopping, what seems like a sick prank quickly turns into a dangerous game with all the cards stacked against them. Can they stop before things become deadly? With heart-pounding suspense and relevant social commentary comes a high-octane thriller that will keep you turning pages until the very last line. But the truths it depicts about race, class, and hierarchy will stay with you long after the read is done. The sea is salt and so am I. This book will rip your heart out. Infused with complex emotion, Cassandra Hart's first novel is a compulsively readable tale of secrets, loyalty, and lies that she's been crafting for over a decade. The story follows three characters ensnared in a web of secrets and unspoken feelings that brings them closer, but also threatens to pull them apart. Perfect for fans of engrossing fiction like All the Bright Places, We Are Okay, and Normal People. Interwoven throughout are elements that touch on important issues that are acutely relevant to teens everywhere. Disability, mental health, suicide, and climate change are thoughtfully discussed with honesty. Plus, The Sea is Salt and So Am I isn't just an achingly beautiful read, it also boasts an exquisite, evocative package that calls to mind the roaring waves of the storms, both literal and metaphorical, that loom over the characters throughout the novel. Next slide, we have some of our continuing series. There are some great ones out there, including We Free the Stars, which comes out just next week, and All the Tides of Fate by Adeline Grace in just a few more weeks after that. But these are all great. So if you have not jumped on these series yet, now is the time to do so. When you get to the subsequent books, they're all phenomenal reads. This list, a full list of YA titles for the season. Also, please check out, there's some great ones in here. I think that takes us right to the end.
Yes, we just 1 minute over, which is pretty remarkable. I want to say thank you to everyone for joining us today. It has been an absolute pleasure to share this time with you. For anyone wondering, the cover reveal for Willodeen is now online. I'm dropping the link into the chat now, so if you feel so inclined, please feel free to share that online, tagging Katherine at KA author, at MacKids SL, and at Mr. Shu Reads. And please remember to subscribe to our school and library newsletter.
Yes, and don't forget to visit our website, MacKidsSchoolAndLibrary.com. We will post the recording of today's event as well as send you a follow-up email with that recording, and again, our title list, which has the advanced materials links in it. And on the screen here, you see all of our contact info. Please don't hesitate to contact us. We would always be happy to discuss books with you or answer any questions that you may have. And thank you so much for taking time out of your day to join us today. Take care, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.